In this video, I'm going to quickly demonstrate some functionality on this details page here, and then go to the code in IntelliJ and show a few of the tests that verify the functionality. So on this page, it shows the details for all the videos that are on the website. Here's the video, the title, and the description. And then it also has the average rating and the rating that the current user has for the page. And when I navigate to different pages on the left, you can see that the information changes based on the information for that specific page. So all of the pages are actually already loaded into JavaScript variables, so you can see that the URL doesn't change when I navigate to these different pages. What happens is that it just reloads this page information here based on the information that's in the variables. Another thing is that when I am logged in as an administrator, I get this edit page button here. And if I log out, then it goes away. I log back in as an administrator, and it shows up again. So in the tests, what I want to do is verify that the details controller for the details page is subscribing to those change events. So I have a page manager service and an authentication service for the page changes and the user changes, and you can subscribe to updates for when those variables are changing in the service. So what I do here is I create a spy on this mock page manager that I've created for the test, and then when I create the controller, I need to verify that the controller has subscribed with a callback method to the page being viewed change callback. And then I do the same thing for authentication. When the controller gets created, I need to have subscribed to the user change callback so that when a user logs out or logs in, I can handle that on the page. Another thing you'll notice on this details page here is that when I'm changing from page to page, the user rating gets updated. So what happens is when the page details controller gets a new page, it is supposed to go out to the server with an AJAX call and request the rating for the current user that's logged in. So in my tests, I want to verify that functionality. The page details should get the current user's page rating when the page changes. So I'm spying on this method in my mock page manager. I want to watch the request for getting the page rating, and then I set the current user in the session so that it gets through some gates. I change the page and I apply the change, and then at the end of the test I verify that the page tries to get the rating for the current user. And you'll see that the reason I did this part is in this other test, it should not get the current user's rating when no user is logged in. So I don't want to waste an AJAX call to the server if no one's logged in. So if I say current user equals null, then I can apply that user change, and when I watch this spy, this method should not have been called. And I actually just noticed that I didn't even change the page there, so of course it wouldn't be called. This test is verifying when the page changes, then I need to go get the new user. So here I'm showing the administrator screen where you can manage the user roles for the website. And I want to write some tests that I don't have yet that verify some functionality on this page. So you can see here that I'm logged in as me. I am an administrator, and that's why I can see this information. However, if I log out, then I'll get this notification that I have to be logged in to edit the users. This makes sense that if you just take this URL and enter it in when you're not logged in, you just know it exists, then you actually cannot do anything on this page because you're not an administrator. So what I want to do now is write some tests that cover that functionality. So over there is my user management controller. Over here are my tests for the page details. Let's copy some of this stuff. Actually, let's just write the new tests above this old one. Close bracket, close parentheses, all right. And these are going to be tests for the user management controller. And what I'm going to have to do is create a mock authentication, just like in the page details, because I use the authentication service in this controller as well. And then I want to set up the guts of the test here, getting the scope variable and the controller. I do not have a page manager for this one, so I won't need that variable. Don't have a rating on this page. Alright, so I should be able to write a test. So just like the page details controller, I also want to be subscribed to user change events. And I'm going to need to change this name to user management controller. Go over to my test and see that I'm failing. And that is because I believe I have a user management service that I haven't mocked out. Yep. Ah, yes, it's for getting the user list. So what I want to do here is create a mock user management object here and declare it up. So the reason I have these mock creations inside it before each is because if I want to modify a function in here within a test, I want it to not affect any of the other tests, so I set them up in a before each. Mock user management. Alright, so I believe what I'll need to mock out here is the get user list for now. How about we return an empty list? Oh, return. Can't forget that. And come back to my test. Oh, I haven't yet defined it in the setup. So user management, give it the mock user management. So what I'm doing is over here in the controller for the user management, it wants the user management service and I am providing it the mock user management. If I write this out, now I am failing because I don't have the modal provider. This is an Angular UI provider, and I just want to give it what it already has. Modal. I don't want to mock that out at all. So I'll put that in here. And modal And now this still isn't working because I need it as a dependency here. In my test, I need to include the Angular UI library UI bootstrap. All right. And then I'll have to restart my server here because I need those new includes. Move Chrome out of the way. And now it's still failing because I did not include it in the setup. I need to include UI Bootstrap and load that service. UI.bootstrap. If I go back to my tests now, success. Good. So that was a lot of work, but it was the initial setup. The next few tests should go a little bit quicker. Should watch for changes to the user login. So I verified that I am subscribed to watch those changes. Now, what is the next thing I want to test here? How about this get users function here? So what I think I want to do here is see that when the get user request in that service returns a 500, then I want to make sure that I'm showing an error message. But actually before that, it looks like I don't even get to that point if I don't have a user logged in. So let me create that test. Should not get the list of users if there is no user logged in. So I want to spy on the user management mock, and the specific method that I'm interested in is the get user list. And what I'm going to do is verify that it does not call that method. So expect mock user management get user list dot not have been called. And of course that's going to pass because I haven't even called the method yet, but it should continue to pass if I do scope.getUsers. Alright, good. So the next one, what I should do is verify that it is calling. We'll do the same thing and verify instead of that, I verify that I am showing that modal dialog. So I want to spy on the scope, and the method I'm interested in is showModal. And then I want to verify that showModal was called. And good, it was. But to be even more specific, we can do some Alright, so let's write another test here. So we want to get past the current user. So mock authentication, I want to set up a current user. It should show an error if the current user does not have admin rights. So these three things as well. And I want to say scope.currentUser equals something. Oh, no, that's not what I want to do. I want to say current user as in the variable that the mock will be passing back. Current user equals empty. And that reminds me, up here I should make sure that the current user is null before I get the users. So it looks like I minimized Chrome. You can tell when you minimize Chrome, it starves the resources there. And then it runs the tests really slowly. So I think I know why this failed, but let me maximize Chrome first, my Chrome test window. And it should get through those tests a lot quicker. All right. So I think it said only one failing test, but it showed 2 failures there. All right, 1 failed, good. So that has to be the one that I just wrote. And the reason it did that is because in my controller I have a then, because in the service I'm returning the AJAX, and so there's a promise, there's a deferred promise, and so I do an asynchronous call here. What I want to do is in my mock I need to set up a deferred response or a deferred return value. That's why I have this queue here. So if I do var deferred equals queue.defer, and then I return deferred.promise, so the promise object. What I want to do here is instead of returning empty array, I want to resolve the response instead. And then as you can see, this is failing for a different reason. Come back down to my test. It says that show modal should have been called, and it wasn't. And that's because I did not set up the mock to return a failure response. So what I actually just did up here was make it return success. What I want to do is, yes, I want it to return success by default, but I want to override this functionality in this one test and make it fail. So what I want to do is come down here, and before get users, I want to change what this function does. And instead of resolving empty array, I want to resolve a object that says status is 500, or an error, or even better, So now if I come to my test, it's actually still failing, and I think that's because up here I have not set the session variable for the current user to be something other than null, which it needs to be. Alright, so I spent some time outside of recording to figure out what was going on. It took me a while. It turns out I needed to do a root scope apply in the after each, and then I also need to do an apply after I get users for this method to get called finally. But it is working, and now I will move on to the next test here. And what we want to do for that one is the successful path, users equals response.data. So it should set the users in the scope to be the list of users passed back by the service. Okay, so I want to go back up here. My default response here, I want it to be successful. And I want it to return a user list, var user list equals about a couple strings, it doesn't even matter. Alright, something 2, and data, return user list. Okay. Here we go. Now the data has the user list. Come back down to the test. And I want to do a scope.getUsers after I set current user equal to something that has a session variable, so it gets past that check right there. And then I want to scope.apply. I know I have to do this because I'm setting a variable, and I want to make sure that the users is what was returned in the response, which was the user list. Looks like we've got a passing. So if I change this to null, okay, it fails. It expected something to equal empty, and clearly it's not empty. So good, passing.